give us the last piece of the puzzle, which is the remaining financing. And I'll be in the audience if you have any questions along the way. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. This is Adeline Wolf from Mountain Housing Opportunities. First of all, thank you so much for, in my absence, awarding Lakeshore the extra boost that we needed to really inch our way towards closing. We're really excited to hopefully be closing this month in May. I know it's been a long road with you all, and it wouldn't have been possible without your collaboration. However, if it's not one thing, it's another these days. You can never say affordable housing is boring. We are up against really skyrocketing insurance costs right now, as I'm sure you all are aware in the market. Just for a snapshot, we budgeted this property at $40,000 annual a year for property insurance and have gotten a quote back from our carrier that is going to be $127,000 a year. Obviously, that puts a knock in the project's financing, and the reason is because yearly operating costs can't be sustained under our current financing with that insurance cost. As such, I'm asking you all to revisit the issue of property tax exemption for nonprofits developing affordable housing in this county. I'm asking today if we could decide clear direction on the status of Lakeshore Villas that was a prior year AHSP applicant, and if we can just land on a direction to go or a decision for the status of property tax exemption. It will go a long way towards not postponing the closing of Lakeshore Villas. And I will be in the audience for questions if need be. Thank you all.
Hi, I'm Andrea Golden. I know we've come to share a bit before, so I'll keep it really brief, but we just wanted to emphasize how important this home repair program has become for our community. It's one of the key anti-displacement strategies in our neighborhood plan, and we're hoping to begin work with Buncombe County to kind of turn that neighborhood plan into a small area plan this upcoming fiscal year, and really hope to see home repair continue as part of that. We also just wanted to share, we have even more increased capacity now. We recently hired a new home repair program manager who is from our community and brings over a decade of nonprofit management experience and community relationships. So we're super excited to move him into this role. And that we've just built a great deal of neighborhood trust in our program, including starting to work with some of the mobile home park owners that are local to our community so that they can make referrals to us for members of their communities that they're seeing are really struggling with their home repair needs. And we've been able to make some really critical interventions. Our previous home repair program, if you note, and we had received funding from other sources such as Dogwood. This upcoming year, we've decided to redirect those into other anti-displacement strategies that we're working on as a neighborhood. Home repair is one of the few anti-displacement strategies that Buncombe County has committed funding for, which is why we're coming back with this request. So thank you so much for your consideration.
Good afternoon. My name is Dee Williams, and as some of you know, Dogwood Health Trust paid me as a consultant to put together over 70 African-American churches throughout Western North Carolina, from Murphy to almost, I guess, Mooresville. And the purpose was an economic development engine which specializes in affordable housing and also financial literacy and some small business development. That corporation is Eagles Wings Community Development Corporation, and we've supplied you with a financial literacy training that's nuanced to the African American population called Getting Your House in Order. And also I represent United Community Development as a client that has provided home repair to over 100 homes, primarily in Southside, Shiloh, Swannanoa, Arden, all over Buncombe County. And we're looking for funding for that. We've also got support for capacity building from the Community Foundation, WNC Bridge Foundation. And also we're looking forward to just using anti-displacement, as Andrea said, in the Black community here. It is urgent. And so we're here today just encouraging you, because representation does matter. We know that average median household income, according to the housing study that the city of Asheville just concluded, of the AMI for Black families has fallen since census 2020 to below $18,000. So our services are direly needed to prevent displacement and poverty. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Saranka with Buckeye Community Hope Foundation. Just wanted to express our thanks for your support and continuing support. And obviously, we still have a gap that we're trying to close, working on a couple different nuances of assumptions and assumptions that might not be reality. But I know we're getting very close. Got our environmental management plan signed off by North Carolina, the DEQ Brownfields Division. So we're good there. And now we're looking forward to wrapping up our plans, submitting for permits, looking to close in July or August. And just look forward to trying to get the last few wrinkles worked out with you guys in the city and move forward.
Good afternoon. I'm Charlie Irick with the Fitch Irick Corporation. I am here to talk on behalf of our application for the Rocky River Apartments in Woodfin. I think staff has done a great job underwriting our project, and I'm just let you guys know I'm here to answer any questions. We are anticipating submitting our full application for tax credits to NCHFA next month. We're also working with the Housing Authority to get our bond inducement done and seeing what we can do to apply and get project-based vouchers to help the financial feasibility. So if you have any questions, I'm here. I'm happy to answer. And I just hope you look favorably upon our request. Thank you.
Hello, it's Andy Barnett with Asheville Area Habitat for Humanity. I'm going to join the chorus of all of these great projects and ask for your continued support to our affordable home repair program. It's been very successful here in Buncombe County in keeping folks in the homes and communities that they love. We're really excited to have a proposal in front of you for additional units at our Glenbridge neighborhood that you have already supported. It was we were excited to be able to find a way to creatively add even more affordable homeownership units in that neighborhood. And then to be in front of you with a third request for a scattered site down payment assistance program. And this is something that we've been working on for a while and trying to respond to a need for scattered site down payment assistance. This model is exciting to me because it sort of marries together two things that we think can't happen together, which is permanent affordability and wealth building for the first owner. Usually we kind of trade those things off and say the first owner has to somehow limit their equity building in order to make the unit affordable down the road. And by creatively layering public sector funding and private sector funding, we're able to accomplish both of those policy goals. So really excited to see how that goes forward and hope for your support in that. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm April Burgess Johnson with Helpmate. I just want to thank you for your consideration of our request for funding to expand emergency shelter capacity for survivors of domestic violence. It's well documented that we can prevent domestic violence related homicides. We can prevent murder by providing adequate places for survivors to flee when their homes are no longer safe. When survivors come to us for emergency shelter, we don't just offer a safe haven and a safe place for people to sleep. We have on-site supportive services that are available, both counseling and case management services as wraparound services 24 hours a day at our emergency shelter. We also have advanced security so that we can ensure the safety for the survivors who are living there. The request for a construction grant that you have in front of you is an essential piece of our ability to see this project to its fruition. We've been very successful in our fundraising efforts, and I'm gratified to see how the community's risen up to support us. Even with all of that monumental support, we are still facing long-term financing costs if we don't secure additional funding. And what those financing costs mean for us as a small but very stable nonprofit is that we'll have to take those monies to service the debt for the shelter if we incur some away from direct services. And that's a loss to the community, both in terms of the safety and the well-being of the survivors of domestic violence that we're able to serve. So thank you so much for your consideration, and I'll be available if you have questions.
Good afternoon. I'm Linda McDaniel with the ARC of Buncombe County, and I just want to thank you for your past funding for our safe and stable housing. We work with a population of unknowns, and we work with a population that doesn't have much and rarely has anything. And we've found that true, and this program has made such a significant difference in the lives of our families. We have had some real success stories because of this funding. And I get very emotional when I'm talking about our families because housing makes a difference in how they live, the children's education, and mom and dad having employment. So we hope you'll consider our next proposal. Thank you.
Greetings, Commissioners. Jeffrey Barton with Mountain Housing Opportunities. Boy, you have a robust community of great providers who are eager to put your resources to work. So I applaud you for your leadership in leading the community to vote for the Affordable Housing Bond. That's now a good resource that can be deployed in the community. And I hope that you'll see that there are plenty of great uses for that funding. I also hope that you'll see that the HSP program is a great source for the ongoing needs for home repair. So today you have several good projects in front of you. Our friends at Poder Emma have a great repair need, and we also have a repair program asking for $400,000 to really provide anti-displacement measures and homeownership preservation for our community's most vulnerable homeowners. So appreciate your consideration of that. My colleagues Rich and Addie spoke very well about the needs for the rental team. I'll just echo what Addie said, that application of the property tax exemption that is the current rule to a prior year award of Lakeshore Villas is absolutely essential to get that project to closing table. So appreciate your consideration. I hope that's something that you'll entertain today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Eddie Stars. I'm here on behalf of Roars Companies for the Pine Lane project. I just want to say appreciate your consideration, and we're here to answer any and all questions. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, thanks everyone for taking time to come out, share your comments. All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from April 16th.
I move to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we have presentations. The first is an update on AHSP contracts.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I will keep this brief as we have a lot to talk about today. But we wanted to touch base on our current grants from FY24 and fill you in on their progress. At the top, we are looking at Evelyn's tenant-based rental assistance program. They have 30% of their grant remaining with 94 households served so far. So we would expect to see them passing their obligated household impact of 103. Below that, we have Elida Homes tenant-based rental assistance with 61% of the grant open and 4 households impacted to date. Below that, we have the ARC of Buncombe County with another tenant-based rental assistance grant with 36% of the grant open. and 20 households impacted to date. So we have already surpassed their minimum household impact. Below that, we have Fairhaven Summit, and this is something we just want to show that is in the balance of obligation for FY24 funds. We have Habitat for Humanity's Emergency Repair Program with 55% of their grant open and 14 households impacted to date. Mountain Housing Opportunities Emergency Repair Program is 30% open with 21 homes impacted to date, and we expect to see past the anticipated impact with the amount of money that is left there. Below that, we have Put Air Emma's Emergency Repair Program with 100% of their grant open currently, and On Track's New Start in-person homebuyer education classes with 100% of their grant open. And then we have unallocated funds from FY24 in the amount of $2.1 million. And I would be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks. All right. Next up is discussion of the FY 2025 AHSP funding recommendations. So
to sort of start the conversation off, the last couple of meetings, we have been reviewing the 23 submitted applications for your consideration. And just as a reminder of the funding that's available today, is a slide that we shared with you at last week's meeting, showing the handful of projects that had been previously funded that have returned for either renewed or additional funding. And with that and the previous balance that Jake indicated as unallocated funds that were either returned from incomplete projects, or if you also want to look at the program income, the current available Affordable Housing Service Program balance is right about $3,500,000. And then for the bond projects, we also have the Redwood Commons and Maribel. Both of those projects are returning. And so to keep the numbers clear, those funds are included as part of the available balance for reallocation. So if a project that is returning for funding out of today's meeting would need to be reallocated to that project out of the available balance. So those funds have been put back into the pot, as they might say, and would need to be put back onto a project, reawarded to a project in order to maintain that or additional funding.
Cool.
And then on this spreadsheet with very tiny text, as there are a lot of requests and a lot of data to take in on this decision-making process, we do have a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet that we can pull up that might be a little bit easier to read on this. And then as you all would like to make those decisions, and make some funding recommendations, we can record those, and those balances will reflect in real time. Okay. So it will take just a moment to switch those programs, and then we can go from there.
All right, just as you're doing that, so just in terms of our process too, so we're going to start this discussion today and see how far we get. So we've also talked about the potential for in a follow-up meeting on April 30th, if we need additional time to kind of conclude the decision-making around the recommendations that we'll be making to the commission. So we'll see how far we get today, but it's entirely possible that we might break this process up into two meetings. So there's a lot to cover. And we don't always get it done in the first bite at the apple. Okay.
Right. That's still quite small,
Can you,
unfortunately.
can you do any better than that. Five. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Try to zoom in a little further.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe hide the buttons at the top, maybe.
That's good. Right.
Limitations of technology. I'll find as many of these elements as I can. And the way, as we bounce around a little bit, the way this spreadsheet has been organized is we do have our grant funded projects listed, followed by our loan requests. We will be recording any of your suggested amounts in either the AHSP or bond columns. The amount at the top represents those available balances that I mentioned earlier, and then we can keep track of any available balance after those awards. Any amount over, particularly for the general fund budget, any amount over the $3.5 million amount will appear as an amount that would need to be allocated on the FY25 general fund budget.
Okay. All right. So just before we start, I just would also say thanks to everyone who has submitted proposals into this process for this year. It's a really robust portfolio of projects. And so we really appreciate all the good planning and development work that folks have already put into projects to get them to where they are today. And I guess we could just kind of jump into it and start talking through some of this. And I would be happy to start off with some discussion around some of the proposed new construction projects that are new to the committee's review. As was mentioned earlier, some of the projects are projects we've looked at in previous cycles and are still works in progress. And so we can come back to those in a bit. But in terms of some of the new projects that are in front of us, we have two new proposed 4% LIHTC projects that have been submitted. The Roars project, Pine Lane, and the Rocky River Fitch project. These are both very significant projects. They do represent big investments needed to make them happen because as we all know, there's not as much subsidy associated with these projects as there are with the 9% projects. So the requested investments are significant. But I would speak in favor of being supportive of both of those projects. These are the kind of projects that we really wanted to see come forward when we proposed the affordable housing bond referendums, right? Because these are the kind of projects that would simply not really be feasible in Buncombe County, working with the level of resources we had prior to the bonds. They do require more investment per unit, but they, as outlined in the financial plans for the projects, they leverage a tremendous amount of additional resources to Buncombe County if they're developed through these programs. So, in the 9% projects, we're only going to likely get one of those every year. So if we're going to reach these ambitious goals we have around constructing the number of affordable rental units we want to see in Buncombe County by 2030, we absolutely need to see some of these 4% projects developed in the county. So I would like to propose that we support a recommendation to the commission for those two projects. And on the Pine Lane project, I would suggest funding level of $7,593,318.
Support that.
And for the Rocky River project, the proposed amount, at least to sort of start the conversation again, some of these numbers might move around as we look at allocating finite resources, is $7,889,950.
For Pine Lane.
That's for the Rocky River,
Oh.
the Fitch project.
Okay.
So 7,889,950. And then for the Pine Lane project, 7,593,318. Okay.
So for Rocky River, just to make sure I'm clear, 7,890,000.
Let me repeat that. 7,889,950,
89. Okay, thank you.
which I think is identified in the staff report, just within the range of what we could look at. Okay. Then we also have the Lofts at Swananoa project, which is 9% project. And I would recommend a funding allocation of $379,787 with that Light Tech project.
For the earlier two recommendations, I included those in the bond column. If there's a particular source that you would like to use, I'm happy to put
Yes.
that in.
Thank you. Yes, so certainly the 4%, I'm assuming like those would be bond funded projects. So, because I think that's the only way to do that, unless we
Right.
want to go convince our colleagues to come up with a bunch of new money.
So the Lofts at Swananoa.
Yeah, and so the Lofts at Swananoa, I guess I didn't necessarily have like a predetermined view on which pool of funds that could come from. Certainly it's, could be bond funded.
Yeah, when I was spreadsheet, I put it in the funded category for now.
Why don't we start off assuming it's a bond funded project, and then as we look at the allocation of the other funds, we could always, again, move things back if we needed to. All right. And so as you were mentioning, so then kind of coming back to a couple of the projects that we have talked about previously, previous Light Tech projects. So for Redwood and Maribel, if we've previously supported those, but we would need to kind of technically reallocate those funds in this cycle if we want to keep that moving forward.
Correct.
Okay. Right. So I'm supportive of that.
Keeping them going. Yeah.
Yes.
I will use, we had recorded the previous awards as columns that are tucked away here, so I will use those amounts. Change that to- So for red, that's Redwood. 0.826. The other one you said?
You said Laurelwood or Redwood?
I said Redwood
Okay.
and Maribel.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. But the same would be the case for Laurelwood as well. Is that correct? Is that a reallocation would be needed?
Yes.
Okay, I'm for that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Redwood's a no-brainer.
I had put the Laurelwood 4% in, not in the bond category in the AHSB, because I was looking. Doesn't matter today. I do want to make sure, and this may be a good question for this guy to do that, as we're looking at those bond dollars, that we are prepared to have funding available for our Cox Avenue projects. I think that's going to require funding prior to Berry Road. Or do I have that reversed?
Right. So Cox Avenue project is estimated to have a gap of between 9.8 and 16.1 million. The Ferry Road project has a funding need of about 24 million in gap funds. And so the committee could recommend, like kind of once you've made these determinations today with whatever balance is left, that those would be kind of set aside for one or both of those activities. You can make a recommendation about that, but basically whatever is left in the bond fund could be allocated to those projects.
Thanks for the reminder. Refresh.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm certainly 100% supportive of the Cox Avenue project. I do anticipate we're going to be having additional conversations on those projects soon in terms of potential other funding sources for them as well. And since they are county-owned properties, there is at least some potential for those being funded through limited obligation bonds. That's been a very preliminary kind of conversation. So I don't know that it's something that, we're sort of early in that conversation, but that could be a potential, option as well. All right. No.
Just want to clarify something. So for Redwood Commons and Maribel, you are suggesting reallocating the existing amount. Okay. Just want to make sure we have the numbers right in there.
Yeah, and again, let's see how far we get today. We may carry this conversation over into the next meeting. So I'm certainly supportive of at least kind of maintaining this level of support as we look at the total funds available. There could be potential to do something different, but all right. Commissioner Edwards, do you want to speak to some of the other applications?
Sure. Let's go back up to the top of the spreadsheet and look at the emergency repair funding. For Habitats, 574,000. For Emma, 106,000. NHO, 400,000. And United Community Development, 60,000. I'll take two more.
Okay.
While we're in this section, let's look at the tenant-based rental assistance. Evelyn Charities, 126,000. And 25,000 for the ARPA loan.
And I'm supportive of those recommendations as well.
So that will bring your grant recommendations to 1,311,000. And your available balance for the Affordable Housing Service Program at 2,266,903.
Okay. Assuming that those projects that we identify as bond funding stay in the bond funding category.
Yeah, I'll make some additional recommendations on Habitat for Humanity down payment assistance, the scattered site, 146,000.
From the Affordable Housing Service.
From Affordable Housing Services, yes. And also from Affordable Housing Services, the Greenbridge Phase 2, 136,950. I will make another recommendation for Star Point with NHO at 1.3. Also AHSB.
You said 1.3.
1.3. Is a starting recommendation.
Okay. What does that bring us to?
6,986.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, it's the Amanda recommendation show today. We're gonna do helpmate as well with a starting recommendation for 800,000. AHS.
It says 9.3 in the bond column. Is that what that says?
Yes.
Right, I'm I'm supportive of the direction that we're going in on these recommendations. I would be, happy to, of course, continue the conversation, hear other ideas and suggestions on specific proposals. I would also be happy with us scheduling the follow-up meeting on the 30th and basically kind of taking an additional week, kind of think about these preliminary recommendations, think about the funding that's unallocated, and come back and finalize our recommendations at that meeting. This is a lot of funding, and I think sometimes it's good to just take some additional time and go through the spreadsheet before we finalize our recommendations on these proposals and some of the other ones that have been submitted.
I support that recommendation as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't want to cut off the conversation. So if there's other questions or suggestions or any kind of comments from the staff on any of these, happy to continue the conversation, but just wanted to suggest we do plan on having the additional meeting to make the final recommendations.
I just want to hear Matt repeat what you said previously about Cox Avenue and Ferry Road in terms of the timing of estimated timing of those needs.
So when we were putting together the presentation materials for last week's meeting, what we tried to list were projects that may potentially need a commitment in fiscal year 25 during that budget time frame. And so with working towards development agreement, I know that the Ferry Road is advancing a little bit ahead in terms of going to request for proposals. Kind of their schedule's a little ahead of the Cox Avenue schedule. But there is a negotiation window, to get to development agreement, to identify the amount of local committed funds and that sort of thing that can take some time. But the anticipation for both projects is that you would be at the stage of a development agreement negotiation where the county might need to commit to funding within that budget year of FY25. So that's why those two projects. There are others. Valley Street, for example, is not in that same trajectory in terms of being that far along. So that would need to be identified kind of in a future timeframe. But these could potentially need a funding commitment in the budget year of 25.
Okay, and before we adjourn the meeting today, if we proceeded with the recommendations of bond funding for the projects that we discussed today, plus previous projects where we have some commitments made already, and let's just assume 100% of the projects do happen at those specific amounts, what would be the amount of unallocated bond funds?
The unallocated bond funds on this would be 9,336,945.
Okay. All right. So it is kind of within the range of kind of a hypothetical Cox Avenue project, at least under certain assumptions, right?
One of them.
At least,
Yeah.
yeah.
And in this scenario that you're building, just for clarity, there is a balance of available HSP funds.
Yep.
Still, so there's enough, for example, that you might be able to move the commitment for the loss at Swananoa over and reduce, switch which
Yeah,
pot that's coming out of. And there is thus far with what has been recommended, no request from the general fund in FY25 to fund the activities. And that has historically been about 2.3 million. It may not be needed this year to achieve all the activities that you want to achieve, but in this scenario, there is not yet an ask, just a 25 budget.
Yeah. So, great. Any other questions? Comments? Yeah.
My only comment was I showed up today with only one really strong opinion, which was to try to fund the emergency repair as much as the need, the request we're getting from these agencies. So that's what I feel strongest about.
All right. I guess just maybe, I know we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting too, but maybe just kind of following up on Amanda's question about Cox Avenue, these other county properties. Could the staff, I mean, I guess I want to go back to the question around when are we going to have some more detailed discussions about sort of the non-bond funding options for these other projects, right? Because we are we are getting to a point where with some of these significant projects, the bond funds could be committed depending on what we do. And so I think I think the Commission's all really supportive of Cox Avenue. But it would be helpful when we start to kind of understand, well, what are the other options, right? Because there might be some really good non-bond funded, voter-approved bond fund options for Cox Avenue and for others, but we just haven't weighed into that yet. So when are we going to start sort of exploring that in some more detail, so we can either kind of get comfortable, okay, we don't need to reserve the voter-approved bonds for that project, we've got these other options, or hey, maybe that's not such a good approach. We do need to keep funds reserved.
Can speak. So in May, we're planning to come to you all with some updates on that. So that's happening soon. Of course, we want to see what this is going to result in, right? And then we also would need to have the results from the RFP process to know the exact amounts. That's also going to be a determining factor as well. So there's a couple of pieces that still need to fall into place, but I would say end of May is when we would really start that conversation. So start that.
My apologies. Time travel is possible. Right there. All right, great. Well, hey, thank you all for helping us get to where we are today. I do want to emphasize these are just, there's no formal decision made on any of these yet. These are discussion in progress, right? So, but we will meet next week and we will make formal final recommendations at that meeting. So if there's no other questions, I think we can go ahead and move on today. And do we have any announcements? No other announcements. Okay, great. So, is there anything else we need to cover today?
When is the next?
We talked about April 30th. So does that still work for everybody?
It does look that the meeting room is still available for use here. If we need to find a different location, we would notice that in the special call notice as well.
At what? I'm sorry. At what time?
We talked about 1 p.m.
Okay, I have a 2 to 3
I have actually, starting a little bit sooner would be beneficial for me. Could it be viable for the staff if we started either at 12 or 12:30?
I'm wide open before 2. Yeah.
I am also free getting time before 2. So is there any preference from the staff around starting earlier? Why don't we say 11:30 then? That's okay with everyone. Okay.
11:30 to 1. Use the whole hour.
Yes, I probably won't need that much time, but block it. That'd be great. Okay. All right. So we will reconvene at 11:30 a.m. on April 30th. Thank you all. All right.
Appreciate you getting us to this point.
Just want to be sure, are we continuing this meeting until April?